Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I'm going to review all the nerfed, phased out, and changed cards that I could find from previous dates in Hearthstone. And, this is stemming from a thread that I saw on Reddit that posted a lot of these, and there were quite a few more that I knew of that I just added to the list. It took me quite a long time to make it all happen, make it all presentable, because some of the cards, they're basically like from found images. Like a year ago, this card was like this, and someone opened a pack with it, so it's from that. And some of the quality issues are pretty bad, but I'm going to try my best. I've tried my best to collect, I think 79, let's just call it 80 nerfed and old cards of Hearthstone, because I found it very fascinating to see how the game has changed, what has pretty much, gotten out, what hasn't made the cut, and cards that have been changed to what they are now, and how this really works in the current state. And keep in mind, because there's like 80 cards, and I want to get this done like today. I don't want to keep you guys for hours and hours and hours and hours. I'll try my best to rush through them, even though I could probably talk forever about some of these cards. So let's get to it here. First one I have is Claw. Now, Claw is a card that's pretty good in Druid. It's not used too much, but in some decks that combo with like Vile Teacher, have a lot of spells, sometimes Auctioneer it works, in Arena it works. The old Claw used to give 3 attack, which is a lot better than the current Claw in terms of damage, but because you don't get the armor, well, it's a little bit worse. It's hard to really gauge if the change is really worth it, but I like the aspect that you can use Claw defensively, and sometimes the 2 extra armor from the Claw used often will be the win condition against like a Hunter or another rush deck. So I like the current version of Claw more than the old. Then we have Force of Nature. Force of Nature used to be 5 mana. Now I really hate this card, even at 6 mana as the way it is now. So fuck this card. It should be like 8 mana, so you couldn't cast it with Savage Roar. So you could actually play decks that involve strategic trades with minions rather than getting your opponent to 14 life or 22 if you have double Savage Roar, Innervate, Force of Nature. Yeah. They need to keep going on this card, in my opinion. This is the old Flame Imp. It's still 1 for a 3/2, but it used to deal 2 damage to your hero. And while this isn't too significant in the zoo, it is a little bit significant. It also used to have stealth, apparently. That's one thing I didn't know. That predates my knowledge of the game. I started playing Hearthstone when it was first streamable, and it was like August 2014? 2013, August 2013 is when I started playing Hearthstone. Yeah, something like that. So some of these cards, some of these changes predate that. So I haven't played a lot of these cards as the way that you see them in this video. And Stealth Flame Imp is one of those. This seems absolutely ridiculous. But I do know that when I started playing, it was this minus the stealth, and even that was pretty damn good. It didn't really change it too much that you take 3 damage, because when you're playing Zoo, you usually crush your opponent or get crushed. But when it comes to Arena, it made a pretty big difference, because in Arena you often don't have those kind of combos, those kind of synergies, and sometimes in Arena you drop like 5 Flame Imps. The difference between taking 2 damage 5 times or 3 damage 5 times is pretty significant. So yeah, the Flame Imp nerf was pretty big for Arena, but it's still pretty decent. Warlock is still a very strong class in Arena. We have the old Summoning Portal, 3 for a 0/4. Very similar effect, but it used to be 3 mana. Now that it's 4 mana and nobody uses it ever, anywhere, for any reason, really. It's probably best that they lower the cost to 3 mana. 3 mana Summoning Portal enables a lot of really crazy combos. Similar to some Warlock deck these days, they have like 4 or 5 card combos because they can stall into the late game and mask these cards with their draw power, with their hero power. So Summoning Portal enables more of that, and I like it. I wish they did keep this version of the card. We have one that we haven't seen before, Mana Spring Totem. I've never seen this card before. It's 4 mana for a 0/1. Your cards cost 1 less, and this doesn't have a limit. So if you had a Knife Juggler, and then if you played 2 of these and you had 2 pandas, you could just cycle the pandas and you could juggle the entire board to death. So even though this card looks like a piece of crap, it enables some infinite damage combos, so it's kind of dumb, but hey, it's Hearthstone. I think this card should just been left in. It looks cool enough to me. Plus, it's a totem. Maybe makes use for that totem card that gives Totemic Might health to totems. Yeah, it'd be pretty good on this, I guess, because 1 health is pretty shitty. 0/1 for 4. Man, this card being in the game would make Piloted Sky Golem a little bit of a worse card than it is. Then we have a warrior card, Death Wish. 2 mana for your hero, loses all armor and gets +1 attack this turn for each armor lost. Basically, it makes it so the current version of the warrior would be the most broken shit ever, even though it's already possibly the most overpowered deck in the game right now, just because of its consistency, just because of its strength against the whole spectrum of cards. Basically in a situation where the warrior doesn't have much, but he's got like 600 armor and nothing else on the board, you're just staring at him and doing nothing to his armor. Well, if this card was still in the game, that would be a win condition. So good riddance. I do not want to face any warrior these days with this card in their deck, but very cool mechanic, though I don't wish they bring it back. Maybe for a Druid. I think for Druid this kind of card might actually work. As the old Cult Master, 4 for a 3/4, so much more resilient than the current 4/2 of stats on the Cult Master. The effect is still the same. I think this version card is a lot stronger. Cult Master is often a card you just have to play on turn 4 when you play it in Arena, so the fact that it has 2 health is really bad because it literally dies to everything. And if it was a 3/4, well, it may not have. It may have survived the turn, play some other card, play some taunt, stab one, play some charge minions. So it's a pretty big deal for it to have more health. Also, when it comes to board clears, if you're hit with like Consecrate, right now it dies. If you have this and a bunch of small creatures, you'd basically just draw a shitload of cards and be in instant win condition. So this card is way better. Just having more health is better. Cult Master could be like a 1/4. I'd prefer that to a 4/2 in most cases. Then we have the Imp Master. Imp Master is very similar to the way it is now, except it used to be a 1/6. Well, Imp Master is not really played in much. It is played in some token decks, some of the Zoo Warlock, in some cases at least. So, you know, with a limited play, I don't really mind if it had 1 extra health, but to keep in mind, turn 3 to have a 1/5 and a 1/1 is a pretty big deal because it's actually like almost impossible to do 5 damage with 1 card on turn 3 to kill it. So it would be a really, really sticky minion. It would kind of benefit Zoo decks, so I don't really like that, but I do like to see cool cards like these. Plus, if you have a Golden Imp Master, it actually spawns Golden Imps. So you get 1 additional Golden Imp out of this one. Oh, too bad. We have the old Mana Addict. Apparently Mana Addict used to be pretty good. 2 mana for a 1/3. When you cast a spell, you get +3 attack instead of +2. And that enables more combo-y bullcrap to happen, and, well, that's probably not a good thing. Yeah, I think this card is fine the way it is, and right now it's basically pure shit, and I don't mind it being pure shit because I don't like to die in 1 turn from random mechanics with combos. The old Master Swordsmith seems to be playable, at least in Constructed. 2 for a 2/3, and then you give +1 attack that same turn. So in terms of stats, it's basically 2 for a 3/3 if you have another minion on the board, which is, you know, pretty similar to like a Shattered Sun, but because it is on turn 2 and because now we have a lot of sticky 1 health minions as opposed to in the past in Hearthstone where we absolutely did not have that, it's actually really, really strong card. And I can kind of see why they'd nerf it to a 1/3, but because it is a 1/3 and because it requires that other card in play to already be there and do its effect, it's not really used anywhere right now. So yeah, I wish it could have 1.5 attack, but yeah, it's fine, whatever. The old Nat Pagal. This card was actually banned in the early tournaments of Hearthstone. I know that because I actually participated in the old tournaments of Hearthstone. I don't remember it being a 0/5, but I remember it being a 0/4 that at the end of your turn drew a card. And because we at the end of your turn, it wouldn't have to survive another turn to have the chance to draw a card. So that would make it really overpowered, especially because back then a lot of the decks were really slow. So often Nat Pagal will be played on turn 2, sometimes on turn 1 with a coin, and your opponent would be like a Druid. You'd have like a Wrath, so you have to spend his 2nd turn hero powering it, his 3rd turn wrathing it, so he'd lose turn 2 and 3. In the meantime, you draw 1 or 2 cards, and that's why he'd be really, really, really broken. And sometimes Nat Pagal would fish up like 8 cards in a row and be the complete decisive factor in the game by itself. Fortunately, we don't live in those times anymore. And we have the old Shield Bearer. I've never seen this card the way it is here. 1 for a 0/4 taunt as we know it, but then enrage +1 attack. And you know, because there's no 1 or it's not really too many 2-drops that can deal 4 damage, you'd probably get this effect to go off and it'll make this creature pretty damn good. While it's probably about as good as a Void Walker in this state. Void Walker is not really used that much, but I could see Shield Bearer in this state as we see it now, usable in some rushy decks these days. Plus in Arena it'd be a lot better. Then we have the old Stormwind Champion. Stormwind Champion is already pretty damn good. Some constructed decks actually run Stormwind Champion, most of them being Paladin, but in Arena he's a total beast, and apparently he used to be even more of a beast. 6 for a 6/6, not 7 for a 6/6, and the 1 mana cost difference is a huge deal. So this version of the card would probably see play in just about every single deck in Hearthstone. So that'd be kind of cool. I like the card, but it's pretty frustrating to play against when it's like a Paladin or a Shaman with it because it buffs all other minions. So maybe it's for the best that it is still in its current state. I mean, any card that really has some constructed play right now because, you know, the meta has evolved, is so refined that any card that sees some play is probably good enough the way it is. So good riddance, Mr. OP Stormwind Champion. Then we have Mr. OP Druid of the Claw, 5 mana for a 4/7. Now, I don't know if you could choose back then, so if the choice of playing Druid of the Claw was removed, if you couldn't play it in charge, this makes more sense. It basically has the same stats as, I think it's Fugan, that's the 4/7 for 5, but Fugan's a legendary, he doesn't have taunt, so Druid of the Claw, 5 for a 4/7 taunt might seem a little bit overpowered, and I do see why they would nerf that type of card. But on the other hand, these days there's cards with more devastating effects. You know, often a card like Sludge Belcher would be more powerful than this, but still, it's probably best that it is in the current state where not only do you have the option, but it's not quite as ridiculously overpowered. And we have the old Bite. 6 attack, similar to the way that Claw I showed you guys earlier, where there was 3 attack but no defensive bonus. Bite's not really played very much like anywhere. It's okay in Arena when you have to draft it, but in general, not so much. So, I don't know. Would 6 attack change it? It might change it. We might see some like Face Rush Druid decks. If you could hit for 6, kind of like a Fireball effect, yeah, it'd be pretty good. I could see some decks playing this card in this state, so maybe it was better in this state. We have Dark Summoner, 5 for a 5/3. The first minion you play each turn costs 3 less. So it's kind of like a mega pint-sized summoner. Seems like a cool card, but because it's 5 mana for a 3 health creature, I still don't think it'll see much play. The reason pint size sees play at all is because often when you play on turn 1 or turn 2, your opponent just doesn't have a 2-drop to deal with it right away, so you get that bonus. But when you're playing it on turn 5, I mean, give me a break. You're not going to see this card go out of control like you see pint size. So it's a piece of crap. It seems like they just chose to get rid of it rather than refine it. And we have the old Illidan Stormrage. Now, as you guys know, Illidan Stormrage is just basically a piece of crap these days. It just doesn't have enough health. Right now, it has 5 health the way I remember it, because nobody really sees that card played. But it used to have 7. It used to be 7 for a 7/7, so it had the War Golem treatment, and the battle card used to be both players discard 3 cards and draw 3 cards. Now, the way the text is phrased, it would seem like you'd get to choose which cards you want to discard, but as it so happens, it's usually not really the case in Hearthstone. When it says to do things, it's usually at random. So it'd be discard 3 random cards and draw 3 random cards. And because you're the one playing the card, it'd be really overpowered, because if you're playing like a zoo deck and it's the last card in your hand, you'd basically discard 3 cards from the opponent. He would draw 3, where you would discard none and draw 3. So because you're the one playing it, this card would be ridiculously overpowered. Now, I feel that Illidan should be ridiculously overpowered and maybe not Dr. Boom, So maybe they need to rethink this one a little bit. I definitely like this version a lot more. The old Onyxia, 9 mana for an 8/8. When you draw a card, deal 2 damage to all characters. So basically, if you draw 4 cards, the card would kill itself. And it's 9 mana, so you can't really combo it or anything. Yeah, that's pretty dumb. I think I like the current Onyxia. It's just fine. We have Dark Spear Hunter. Apparently this is the card that was then replaced by Savannah Highmane. But this card is a 2 for a 2/2, and when you play a beast, the beast gains +1/+1. So it's kind of okay. It's like beastie. I don't know. Savannah Highmane kind of makes Hunter what it is, and it kind of pushes it into the mid-gamey deck. So it's fine. I'd rather not have more early-game Hunter cards that might be abused, though I don't think this would be one of them. It looks pretty crappy to me. We have Fade. I did have some opportunity to play with this card. It's 2 mana to give all your minions taunt and draw a card. And Priest was by far the shittiest class in the game when I first started playing Hearthstone. And this is one of the cards that I often had to choose when I played Arena. And it's not too bad because it was the shadiest class in the game, and other classes were so aggressive, like Rogue, and you guys will see soon why that is the case. This card ended up not being too bad, because what you'd do is, you'd be a losing situation with like no life left, and then you just fade and you give like 6 creatures taunt, and then you'd actually stall the game and be able to win. So it was pretty decent. This card was, I think, replaced by Shadow Ward Death, and it kind of made it in a similar fashion where your opponent would then use up their whole turn to play one big thing, and you could deal with it very quickly. So it had the similar effect, but less situational, because you didn't actually need creatures on the board. But I do miss the card. I kind of wish they added Shadow Ward Death and didn't remove Fade. It's not, I don't think it's too overpowered the way it is. I think it's a cool card, and I'd like to see it played. But Blizzard decided otherwise. Goodbye, Fade. 6 mana Mind Vision. Take a card from your opponent's hand. Now, it doesn't say random, and again, it probably was random back then, but let's just say that it wasn't. Is 5 extra mana worth to choose the card that you take from your opponent on turn 6? Probably not. I'd imagine that on turn 6, when you choose a card, the only cards you're going to be able to choose from are going to be legendaries that you'd rather mind control, or hard removal like Siphon Soul, basically cards that you couldn't play the turn that you stole them with Mind Vision. So this card is a piece of crap, while Mind Vision is nothing too great these days anyway. At least it can function. If you have a terrible hand, at least in Arena, you can just Mind Vision turn 1, whatever. You couldn't do that. You couldn't do that with this. So I like the current Mind Vision a little bit better. Prayer Fortitude, never seen this card before. 1 mana, give your minions +1/+1, +1 attack, +1 health. This is kind of like a Power of the Wild with no option. It's alright. It's Priest, right? So, I don't know. I don't think there's much of a point for this card, but it may be pretty effective. It may actually lead to people playing like Zergy Zooey Priests. Another Priest card, Mental Collapse, 2 mana for deal 1 damage to the enemy hero for each card in his hand. So this is kind of cool, because it would actually allow Priests to play like mill decks. So if you had like Cold Light Oracles or that kind of stuff, you could flood their hand, then Mental Collapse, and maybe kind of make a deck around that. While I don't think it'll be competitive, it might give me a fun project to play around. So I wish this card is still in the game. I don't think it'll hurt too many people. Another Priest card, Penance 3. Deal 3 damage, restore 3 health to your hero. So it's kind of like a tiny little Holy Fire. 3 damage is a little bit weird. You have Holy Smite for 2, healing for 3 is not really a big deal, but when you look at efficiency, because Holy Fire is 5 for 6 mana, Penance does have some kind of efficiency on that level. So this is one of the cards that it's kind of hard to guess if it's going to be good. You kind of just have to throw it in a deck and see how it performs. And I think it'll be pretty good. Not too crazy. Adrenaline Rush is a rogue card. It used to be a rogue card. Draw card, combo, draw 2 cards instead for 1 mana. So you just put this in every deck and you cycle it, and if you play something, you just get a free card for 1 mana. And the draw card feature in Hearthstone is usually worth about 1 mana, maybe a little bit more depending on the card that it's coming from. So this card is pretty OP, just because it's a cycle card. You can use it to combo your other stuff, plus it'll probably get really out of control with Auctioneer Miracle Rogue. And because this is an old card, this would have been through that period, so good thing it wasn't. Wild Pyromancer, also 2 for a 3/2. When you cast a spell, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. So not quite the same as deal 1 damage to everything. It's basically like a knife juggler-ish effect. I much prefer the effect that we have now. It allows for way cooler combos, so I'm really glad I changed this card. The original Warsong Commander, 3 for a 2/2. Your other minions have charge. And there's a version after this one. I think it was like 3 for a 2/3. When you play a minion, give it charge, something like that. And that was a bit dangerous because you'd play a big minion and then a priest would mind control it, and the charge was sustained because of a permanent effect on the card. So this is a little bit different than that. I've never played with this version, but it still seems pretty OP. You could have some crazy combos with like Molten Giants and Pandas, as you did at some point in the game. Tyrian Forging, apparently is a warlock card. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think it's some discoloring or something. I don't know. There's no way it was a warlock card. But anyway, as it stands, 8 for a 6/6 Divine Shield taunt, similar how it is now. And Battlecry, draw a card for each enemy minion. So if you're in bad shape, if you're facing a lot of little dudes from your opponent, you're going to draw a shitload of cards. Now, I like Ashbringers more than drawing cards, even though drawing cards is really cool. Ashbringer makes Tyrion what it is today. So I think this card is it was a well-deserved change. The Beast, 6 for a 10/6, similar death route to how it is now. Right now, this card is a 9/7, I believe. Again, doesn't see too much play, so I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Now, 9/7 is still about as bad as a 10/6, but a little bit less bad because it's a little bit harder to do 7 damage than it is to do 6. In general, the really good cards in Hearthstone have charge and high attack, or low attack, high health, and not charge. This creature does not have charge, so its really high attack is basically completely meaningless, and it's a piece of shit. We have the old Sylvanas. While the image is really crude here, I know that there was Sylvanas that was just 5 mana, 5/5 for the same effect that we have now, and that was nerfed to 6 mana, which is basically still in like half the decks out there, so that was a well-deserved change, especially since cards have gotten better because Sylvanas got worse. It really goes to show just how overpowered it was at 5 mana. But the card, as we see it here, from my deciphering skills, it says Battlecry, discard your hand, deal, or I don't know, something 5/3/3 skeletons. Yeah. Discard your hand and probably spawn 5/3/3 skeletons? I don't know. It's probably OP as shit, because they made it to what it is now and it was still OP as shit. And they had to nerf it and now it's still OP as shit. So this card is probably the most ridiculous shit ever, even though I can't really read it right now. And we have Swipe. Now we know how good Swipe is. In Arena, I just say it's the best Druid card because it is the best Druid card. And Swipe is the card that's auto-include in every single Druid deck ever made, ever. Because if you're playing Control, you use it to kill stuff. If you're playing like Aggro, you use it to kill the opponent while killing stuff. So Swipe used to be 3 damage to the primary target and 1 to all others, which seems pretty reasonable. I think this version of the card would not be an auto-include in every single Druid deck, and may actually force people to use spell damage with the Druid cards as something that we haven't really seen in a long time. Scientific Protector used to be like Fade, 2 for a 2/3. Your other minions gain Taunt. Basically, you have like a bunch of things, and then Scientific Protector, fucking 7 minions have Taunt now, 6 minions have Taunt now. And it used to be pretty cool. I liked the effect. It just wasn't as strategic. With the adjacent minions gaining Taunt, it's just a more strategic card. There's a lot more play. There's a lot more advanced positioning before you even draw the card in some cases. So it's much, much better the way it is now. Also, because you can give minions strategically taunt, you also protect other minions. If you have like 2 minions you want to protect and 2 you want to taunt, when you used to play this card, just give them all taunt. So it really just protected the hero rather than strategically protecting creatures. So much better the way it is now. Succubus used to be 2 for a 4/4 with discard a random card. Now nobody plays Succubus. If it was 4/4, I think everybody would play Succubus. So I like Succubus. Yeah, make it a 4/4. Southsea Deckhand, Battlecry, your equipped weapon gets +1 durability. Now, basically, I'd imagine this card was a little bit overpowered if you ran Gorehowl, and you guys will see the old version of Gorehowl in a second just to confirm that statement. But it's cool. I like the charge effect as it is now, but I think this allows for more strategic play, allows for more crazy combos, and I'm all for that, as long as it doesn't get too out of control. And I don't think it will get too out of control. The old Shadow Sun Cleric used to be 3 for a 3/3 with +1/+1 buff, so it's kind of like 3 for a 4/4, but +1/+1 was like in turn like a charge effect. So this card is really overpowered. Zoo dominated the world, and these days it still kind of does, but in the older days, it was bad. And this card contributed to that badness, so it's a good thing that it is a 3/2 now, and it's still a terrific card. It still sees some constructed play, and it's still one of the best cards in Arena. Shadow Step used to not reduce the cost of the minion when you resummoned it, so it seems like they buffed it. It seems like they thought this version of the card was pretty bad. While I agree this version of the card is pretty bad, I don't really like the fact that you can Shadow Step Leroy or Arcane Golem like 2 times and deal like 28 damage in 1 turn. It's like, oh, so skillful. You know, I guess it's some kind of deck type, but it's just not that much fun to play against. So I don't know. Alright, let them have it. Let them have it. New version of the card's better. The old Sea Giant used to be 10-10 instead of an 8-8, but 12 to start instead of 10 to start. So if there was no board, you couldn't play this card, which is in line with Mountain Giant and Clockwork Giant. You know, if you want to play Mountain Giant, you don't have a hand, you have to store up cards. Similar to the old Sea Giant, you had to play minions on the board. 10-10 is basically the same as an 8-8. It's just like way too much stats for most things. So it gets harder moved, or you sack all your little things in it to kill it, or you die. So the stats don't really matter too much. The effect, debatable. Sea Giant sees some playing constructed decks, so maybe 12 mana was the perfect fit for the card. Right now it is a strong card, while most of the Giants see very limited play. The old Savagery. 2 mana, deal damage equal to your hero's attack to all enemy minions. Now, I remember this card being 3 mana, so I guess this predated that version of the card, but this basically is totally insane, and what people would do is they would use cards like Claw, like Bite, like Hero Power, and combine it with spell damage to do ridiculous bursts of damage. So, for instance, I remember like a year ago, I remember some dude would play like turn 10 Malagos, Innervate, and then Savagery, and then all my creatures would get hit for 5 damage, or some dumb stuff like that. Or they would do like claw, bite, and then savagery, and then you lose your entire board, and they'd gain a lot of like armor, and then attack your face for a shitload of damage. So there used to be some crazy combos of this card. It's really a shame they changed it to what it is now, which is basically an unplayable piece of garbage. So yeah, bit of a shame. It used to be really cool. SI7 Agent used to deal 3 damage off the combo while still being a 3/3. So you can see how broken that really is, because SI7 is almost an auto-include in every constructed deck, except for the very well-themed ones, and in Arena it is still the best rare. Prophet Vel used to be 7 for a 5/7 Battlecry draw card for each undamaged character. Wow, that's a lot of card draws, and priests don't really need it. It's much more fun to draw cards through combos, and I think Velen right now, while it's not a great card, it produces cooler effects than just drawing a bunch of cards. So I like the uniqueness, I like the higher stats, even though it gets big game these days. I'm a fan of the new Velen more so than the old. Preparation used to be your spells cost 2 less instead of 3 less, and I still think this card's pretty bad in general, but it does see some crazy tempo plays in constructed, so I think 3 is fine. I don't think it's too broken. Power Word Shield. It used to be +3 health, but it didn't draw you a card, and most people during this time thought the card actually really sucked. I actually remember being on Valley Town with Trump, and we discussed this card. He said the card sucked. I said it was good, and then Ecop in chat would be like, yeah, Krip knows the card's good. No, I felt pretty good about that, but the idea is that Power Word Shield doesn't need to draw you a card to be good. Like, you play a 2-drop, they play a 2-drop, you play Power Word Shield, your 2-drop kills his 2-drop, you still have a minion on the board. So that's what it was used for. I think Power Word Shield in its current state is a little bit OP, but back then, Priest needed all the help it could possibly get, so I'm not complaining about the buff. Polymorph used to be 3 mana. Fuck that shit. 4 mana, please. Pitlord used to be a 4 mana 7/7 would deal 7 damage to your hero, which is amazing. I can't really speculate too well, but I'd imagine that this card would be pretty damn strong in some of the zoo decks. I mean, if you were behind to all the sticky death rattle crap, and then they played this, and the only way you could remove it is with like a hex or a polymorph, you couldn't even fireball this thing. Oh man, what a nightmare would that be. But as you guys will see, there were some other 4 mana minions that were similarly broken among these times. I've never played with this version of Pitlord, but I have played with some of the others. I'll show you in a second. So 2 mana Pint-Sized Summoner used to reduce the mana cost of the first minion that you play each turn by 2 mana. And because it was 2 mana, it was stupidly broken. You do like turn 2 Pint-Sized Summoner, and then turn 3 like Coin Innervate Ragnaros. Yep, fun stuff. No, it was retarded. So, good thing. Millhouse apparently was 2 mana for a 2/2, and you put a Mega Blast card in your hand. Now, on the Reddit thread, people were asking what a Mega Blast was. Apparently, Mega Blast was like a 10 mana card that did 5 damage to everything. So, it was like a 10 mana Ysera Awakens. That's kind of cool. I like that. But 2 mana for a 2/2 with that effect is a little bit lame. And because that card will flood your hand, you'll be more susceptible to mill decks, so maybe not so effective. Though it's really the case where Millhouse is not very effective to begin with in the current meta anyway. Man-Orm used to be the same thing, but start off at 0 attack, which I think is quite fair. This card is super strong. I don't think Mage really needs more early game now that the mechs dominate the early game along with the Undertakers. So, yeah, fuck Man-Orm. 0-3 is good enough for this little dude. And this is the 4-drop I was talking about. Back when I started playing, apparently it was a cool thing to play Warlock, tap a few times, and then play a 9/9 Drake. Now, this made the Drake much more susceptible to effects like Silence, and a lot of people played Silence as a result because a lot of people just played Twilight Drake. You know, 4 mana 6/6, 4 mana 5/5, whatever you name it. The meta was slower back then. This card was absolutely crazy, and that's why, you know, I'm not too surprised I might see a Pitlord at 7/7 for 4, because Twilight Drake was more broken than that. Light Warden used to be +1 attack whenever you healed. Right now it's still not too used, but with Light of the Naru, it does see some use, it does see some really cool combos, so it's a good thing that they buffed the card. Defias Ringleader, the quality really sucks here, but it used to be a 2 mana 2/3, and 2 mana 2/3 is a lot better than 2 mana 2/1, especially when you can coin it out on turn 1 and follow it up with a lot of the other really broken rogue cards that used to exist among this time. So I'm really happy this piece of shit got nerfed, because I did not enjoy playing against rogues in Arena. So much so that before rogues were nerfed, I actually refused to play as a rogue in Arena. This is the old Shiv. It's a 1 casting cost, deal 1 damage, draw a card, and back then you bet your ass people were playing Miracle Rogue. Miracle Rogue is not a new thing. Like a week after I started playing this game, I don't know, half the people online are playing Miracle Rogue, so that's where it's from. Headcrack used to be 2 mana instead of 3. Some people actually ran Headcrack because Rogue was so broken that you could basically just put any random cards in the deck and just beat your opponent down. And Headcrack was a pretty decent one. People ran it with some spell damage cards, so you just hit face with spells and then Headcrack them with spell damage, and it kind of worked. Headcrack is not really played in any case right now, so I guess they could unnerf Headcrack. Why not? Leper Gnome apparently used to be a 1/1 for 1 with the same Death Rattle effect, which I'm kind of happy with. I hate 1-drops with Death Rattle. I hate this guy. I hate being at 2 life with a board clear in my hand and possible win the turn after. So I'd like to discourage people from playing this card, especially because Undertaker's still a thing. Fuck Undertaker. Knife Juggler used to be a 2/3 for 2 mana, similar effect as it is now. I think I prefer a 2/3 because I really feel like aggressive decks are a little bit out of control, so kind of setting it back a little bit, even though a 2/3 would survive a lot of board clears, some early game removal like Claw, like Smite, I think I prefer just taking a little bit less damage when this dude hits. And because it has slightly higher health, I think it makes him a slightly better late game minion. So for instance, when you're playing like against the mage, or you're playing against the mage in arena in top deck mode, Knife Juggler won't die to like ping. So it'll actually survive a second turn and actually, you know, do something in the late game, not be too aggressive in the early game. I think that's a better position for a card like this. Keeper of the Grove used to be 2/3 rather than a 2/4, and I feel that's pretty fair because Keeper of the Grove, like Swipe, is a card that's completely auto-included in every single Druid deck ever made. And is it the best rare? It might not be the best rare. I think in some cases if you had a lot of swipes, you choose Azure Drake in Arena over this guy, but he's very close, and yeah, card's broken. Greater Heal. This used to be the older version of Holy Fire, and Holy Fire was introduced and people were pretty happy. I didn't think Holy Fire was the greatest thing ever because I compared it to Starfire, and Starfire was not the greatest thing ever, and I still kind of believe that to be the case, but because there's a lot of Zeus stuff right now, you really need Holy Fire, mostly because you need to burst heal, and funny enough, that's the card they actually took away to introduce Holy Fire. They had Greater Heal. So Greater Heal restore 2 health to a character for each card in your opponent's hand. And I feel this card actually be amazing these days because you could combo with a lot of the mill effects that are currently in the game. You could fill up your opponent's hand with spare parts, with Yetis, or that kind of shit, and then pop an Akanai down and Greater Heal him for 20 damage! Man, I wish I had done that when this card was still around when I was playing the game then, but didn't get a chance. Too bad. Awesome card as it is. Kind of a bummer, really. I wish they'd kept it. Gorehowl. You look at Gorehowl, you're like, yeah, that's Gorehowl. What's the difference? Well, attacking a minion doesn't cost durability. So basically, it always has 7 attack. So basically, if you just keep killing minions, Gorehowl just lasts forever. And if you have that South Sea deckhand, you can just start swinging face for every South Sea deckhand that you play, and for every upgrade that you play. Alright guys, I'm telling you, Gorehowl is good enough as it is. It doesn't need to be this good, alright? He has a legendary axe or whatever, orcs dude, whatever. Fuck Gorehowl. Alright, Frothing used to be a 1-4. It doesn't really matter. When you play Frothing, you usually just combo him with a crazy amount of stuff. You don't usually just play Frothing on turn 3 and expect him to do much. Sometimes you do in Arena, but in general, you still don't. Not even there. So a 1-4 on Frothing makes him quite a bit worse, but I think he's still playable in the decks that you'd play him these days, and maybe even playable in like Hobgoblin, so that would be kind of cool. Frostbolt used to be 3 mana. The second it became 2 mana, I faced a guy on a arena game who had like 8 of them, and he sniped me for like 8 hours in a row with the same deck. I think I only played him with anything that I queued into, so that was kind of dumb. Frostbolt at 3 mana was kind of crappy, but still saw some use. Frostbolt at 2 mana, I thought was pretty overpowered back then, but these days they've introduced a lot of really good cards, and well, it compares to others pretty well, so I think it's fine at 2 mana. Forked Lightning used to be 2 mana. We don't see Forked Lightning much of anywhere, so at 1 mana, it's fine. Fireball used to be 5 mana. Why is it 4 mana? Oh my god. Like, this card in Arena makes me want to not play Hearthstone on some days. It's like, you know, I'm winning, and then they draw a Fireball, and then they had another Fireball, and then they have a ping, and apparently 13 life was not enough. Fuck Fireball. Alright, then we have Explosive Trap. It doesn't seem any different, but it says when a minion damages your hero, deal 2 damage to all enemies. So the attack wouldn't be the trigger. The damage would still go through, making it a lot worse. So if you attack with like, oh, I don't know, a 30 attack, 1 health minion, the minion would kill you, and then it would die. So I don't like Hunters. I like this version of Trap better. Execute used to be 2 mana. I don't find Execute to be that overpowered. I think it's good as it is. I think Warriors need it. I think 1 mana is fine. Emperor Cobra used to be plus attack equal to the number of mana crystals you have. So if you play this on turn 10, it's a 3 mana 10-1. It'd probably be pretty good in some decks like Rogue where you could stealth it up, and basically horrible in most others. I like the current version better. Demoralizing Roar. I thought this is one of the coolest cards that I saw among the set that I was looking at today. It's 1 mana and your enemy minions get -3 attack this turn. And that's really interesting because when you consider that even though it's a temporary attack debuff, if you have like a big board, and often Druid does, they just struggle to beat like big creatures. They struggle to effectively clear another board. But if they had like a decent board, the opponent plays a decent board, this is basically like +3 health permanently on every creature that's attacking this turn. And that makes it really, really powerful for 1 mana. It's a really interesting mechanic. I'm actually kind of bummed out they removed this card. While it seems pretty broken for 1 mana, I can kind of see it at like 2 or 3. Yeah, it'd be a cool card. Defender of Argus used to be a 3-3, similar to how Shattered Sun was nerfed in the exact same patch. Zoo used to be really out of control. Zoo is still out of control, and Zoo still uses Defender of Argus. So 2-3 for Defender of Argus is just fine. Dark Command is now Shadow Madness. I like Shadow Madness. Dalaran Mage used to be a 2-4 for 3, and this card actually saw a lot of play, especially in the Spell Druid deck and in some Spell Rogue decks. And Dalaran Mage right now is a piece of shit, and there is no real good 3 mana spell damage card except for the Mage only mech that was recently introduced in GVG, so I kind of miss it. I kind of miss the little guy. I thought he was really good, I thought he was really cool, and I don't mind some spell damage. I think they should revert the nerf. Corehound apparently used to be even worse than it is now. It actually had 1 less health. I don't know what they're doing with some of these cards. Conceal used to be 0, and then it became 1 for all your minions on the turn. I've played with this version of Conceal, and it was not too much fun. Basically, on turn 5 or turn 4, they'd play Auctioneer, and then they'd conceal it. Permanently. And then you wouldn't win. Cleave used to be 3 mana. Very few people still use Cleave in Constructed in Arena. It's fine. So 2 mana, that's good enough. Charge. This is an interesting card. This card in this state used to allow for some ridiculous combo warrior. What you used to do is you used to equip Gorehowl and then on turn 9 you'd play Alistraza, hitting your opponent with the effect, and then you'd give it charge for 0 mana, and then you'd deal 7 to face with Gorehowl and 8 with Alistraza if they didn't have armor, if they didn't have a heal in the meantime, or when they weren't able to put up a taunt. They died, so that was pretty cool. Well, if you were the warrior. Chaos Bolt, change the name to Demon Fire. Demon Fire is cooler. Cenarius used to be 8 mana. Cenarius still sees a lot of play in Constructed. Still one of the best legendaries in Arena. In terms of value, he really deserved to be a 9 mana card. Now with Recombobulator, I think he's actually better at a 9 mana card. Captain's Parrot, while it's hard to see, it seems like it used to be a 1 mana, 1/2, which is pretty good for the 1 mana slot. Whenever you play a pirate, draw a card. And I think this combined with some of the new pirate editions actually would make this card playable. Isn't that unbelievable? People would play Captain's Parrot. I've only seen Captain's Parrot in one deck ever in a tournament. It was literally a year and a half ago when people started playing Greenskin. I guess the next step to playing Greenskin in double Sword of Justice, double True Silver Paladin was to add Captain's Parrot to fetch the Greenskin. Fuck, I don't know. This card's terrible right now. That version is pretty cool. I like it. Cabal Shadow Priest used to be worse. It used to be a 3/4, and this is back when Priest was the worst class in the game, and now that it's a 4/5, I hate this card. I like to keep my 2/3s. Priests like to steal them. Priests usually win. Backstab used to be 2 damage to an enemy minion rather than 2 damage to an undamaged minion, and this made it so if you played like, I don't know, a Yeti, and they had an Auctioneer, they just backstab, backstab, and then hero power, or backstab, backstab, Shiv for 1 mana, some ridiculous stuff. This is the last card on the list, the Armor Smith. It used to be a 2 for a 2/3 whenever a friendly minion takes damage, gain on armor. Basically the same effect, but it's a 2/3 stats in terms of instead of 1/4. I think in the current Control Warrior meta, I think it's better that it's a 1/4 for them, but in terms of Arena, in terms of normal play, in terms of like a mid-range Zooey type of warrior, I think they'd prefer a 2/3. So I think it didn't really matter too much. I think 1/4 allowed for this type of Control Warrior to exist, so that's a good thing and a bad thing, depends on who you ask. Alright guys, that concludes all little cards. I know I've missed a few. I just don't know. I didn't know that, like, you know, probably like 3 out of 4 of these cards existed in the way that I've shown you guys. So I don't know. There's probably a lot of changes that we missed. There's probably a lot of iterations, probably a lot of nerfs that I don't know about. But it's really cool to see. It's really cool to examine and see how cards change, what cards didn't make the cut, and you know, kind of realize where we are now. Hope you guys enjoyed my review. Hope you guys enjoyed my comments, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.